Hi honeys, it's Michelle. I'm here today to do my mid-month check-in. I decided that with the amount of books that I read and how much I like to talk about what I think of the books that I read, it would make more sense to split my book reviews into two each month. So on the 15th of the month and then the last day of the month, I will be doing my my book reviews. I have been having a really good month so far. I have already read, this is crazy, in 2 weeks I've read 5 books. And I'm pretty impressed with that. I also yesterday took the whole day off from reading and started reading again today. So that was kind of nice to take a little bit of a break. I will be doing some more updates. You guys seemed to really like that last time at the end of this review session. And one way I'm going to change it up a little bit is when I do my month end, I will just mention which books I read in the first 2 weeks, but I'm not going to really explain what I thought of them. I'll just tell people to come back and watch this video if they want to know, because it just seems kind of redundant, right? To just keep explaining in every, so many videos what I thought of a book. The first book that I read was The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware. And this book is about a woman named Hal who she has no one, okay? She's only had her mother who passed away. She doesn't really have any friends. She has no family, and she doesn't have any money. She's really barely scraping by. And she finds out that she has inherited a bunch of money. And she thinks, well, these people aren't my family, but what do you do in that situation? They think that you're a relative and there's all this money at stake. Maybe just give it a chance, right? See if they'll give you the money anyway. So she decides to do that, to just go visit this family, go to this funeral, and see what she might be able to get from them. Now, while reading this book, I was cold all the way to the bone, chilled. The writing and the way the author talks about how cold it is all the time. She ends up in this mansion that has no central air. And I mean, maybe that's worded wrong. No central heat. There is no heater to turn on. And it's in the winter and it's snowing out, and she's staying up in like an attic with like holes in the wall and stuff. And it's like, you might as well be laying outside. And I felt it. The descriptions were very beautiful and very chilly. And I felt my feet have been cold ever since I read this book. And that's saying something since I live in the desert. But I felt so cold reading it. And it was kind of cool to be so chilled by a book. And I thought, well, I'm probably going to hate this main character, Hal, because she's really living a lie, right? She's going to go and try to get this inheritance when she's not a relative of these people. And I have to say, I found her so endearing and lovable, and I grew very attached to her. And I kind of feel like, is it that, I like to think that I'm an honest person, right? I mean, we all do. But is it that hard to lie to your family? You go to Thanksgiving, you see these people once a year, and they don't really always seem very in touch with who you are, nor do they care. They just want you to be who they think you are, kind of thing. Is it that hard to just let them think what they want? I think it's kind of easy, and I don't even know, is that lying? I mean, it kind of made me think about a lot of things when I was reading this. But I was really scared for her and what she was finding out and what she might be finding out. I was worried about her safety. There was so many twists and turns, and I did not see them all coming. No, I did not. And that was wonderful. And this book was so magical and mystical. There was tarot cards. There was magpies. I just love that. It just adds to the vibe or the mood of a book for me. To top all of it off, this book had an English narrator, which just, luckily, I have a Scribd account, and if a book is on Scribd, I will listen to it when I'm doing the dishes and then read the book physically with my eyes other times throughout the day. But I love it when they're on Scribd, because it makes it so much easier to get into the book and feel the book, feel the mood of the book. And having an English narrator just was icing on the cake. I love this book. I can't wait to wait a couple years and read it again. I thought it was amazing. So I gave it 5 stars. And I've noticed that a lot lately. I am really I don't finish a book, so I don't rate it at all. I give it 3 stars because I think it's okay, or I give it 5 because I absolutely love it. There's not a lot of 2 and 4 stars for me. I mean, I'm not saying there's not any, but there's not a lot. But I definitely recommend this book if you like a good gothic horror. If you like reading in bed and feeling scared while you're doing it, pick this up. You'll like it. Rock, Paper, Scissors. Whew. I was so excited to read this, and this book did not disappoint me. This book had a lot of twists and turns. I felt a lot of shock. I felt a lot of fear while reading it. As you can see, this book also took place in a cold place during the winter, so that cold feeling that my feet had didn't go away yet in this book. It's about a husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Wright, with a W. They're going away on a vacation that they won for their honeymoon, or not their honeymoon, their anniversary. It's their 10-year anniversary. The wife has been writing a letter to the husband every year on their anniversary, but she's never given these letters to him, which adds to the interest and the intrigue of the story. And to add to it, the husband has something called, I can't remember what it's called. Basically, it's, the husband has, I guess it would be like a brain disorder where he can't recognize faces. He can't tell one face from another, so he does not ever know who people are. He distinguishes people by their hair, their voice, their jewelry, that kind of stuff. And so it kind of adds to the interest of the book, because can you imagine having a spouse, for example, that had no idea what you looked like, didn't know if they actually thought you were attractive or not? I mean, in some ways it'd be very nice. You wouldn't have to worry about aging or anything. But I thought that was really interesting to have that in there. I'm so sorry I can't remember the name of it, but this book is, I felt a lot of despair while reading it, but I also here and there felt the warmth of love. And part of the storyline is that whether or not their marriage survives is all pending on how this weekend goes. And they both know their marriage might be over. So it's just a very fascinating look at relationships. Not just husband and wife, but I would say the relationships that people have with their parents as well. I really loved the letters that she wrote each year. It was just kind of a neat way to look into their marriage, where it was at this year as opposed to last year, and to read how somebody really feels about stuff. And it was kind of cool because she would write, let me see if I can find an instance here. She would write how she really felt and then cross it out and put something more politically correct, which I thought was actually kind of hilarious. Because I think we do that a lot when we're dealing with people. We think one thing and... By the way, I'm sorry about my watering eyes. My allergies are giving me a bit of a go today. Well, I can't find an instance of it now that I'm telling you, but she does do that, though. And she'll write what she really thought and cross it out, and then next to it she writes what was politically correct. And I just thought that's so true. That's how we deal with people now. I thought this book was written very beautifully, and I wanted to read you a little excerpt from this book. It's on page 212 if you have the hardcover book. I do know that the lies we tell ourselves are always the most dangerous. And I know that sometimes the thoughts we hide in the margins of our minds are the most honest, because they are ours alone, and we think nobody else will see them. Right? Like, there's just a lot of really good, deep writing in there that I loved. This book is really hard to put down. This one and the last one I read so fast because they were so good. I think that's why I've read 5 books in 2 weeks, is because they're just so good. I can't not read them. I just can't. I give this one 5 stars as well. The one thing I really didn't like about this book is that I will never get to read it for the first time again. Which, that says a lot about the book. And I was so heartbroken that it was over. I loved this ride that she took me on. It was beautiful. I definitely recommend this one. The Horrorstor by Grady, Hendrix. And this book is about, it's basically a store that's like IKEA, and there's some weird things happening at night. And so the store manager, Basil, decides that he wants 2 of his employees, Amy and Ruth Ann, to stay overnight at the store and do rounds to see what's going on. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But boy, does this book also take the reader on quite the ride. I personally really enjoyed this book. I loved just the fact that it took place in a store and it's retail workers. I worked retail for quite a few years, and there's something very interesting about working retail. You can have coworkers that you think are great. You can have coworkers that hate you and you don't know why. I'm not saying it's not like that other places. It's just, I'm thinking of retail specifically. Trying to keep the store clean and keep it a certain way, and the way the customers are, the way the products that you sell are. I don't know, it was all in here, and I just really loved how he wrapped it up in a nice package for me. The experience of working retail. Also, I vividly remember working retail and wondering sometimes, what if there's people in this, like at one of the places I worked was JCPenney. What if there are people that hide in there at night and stay there all night long and then do stuff and we just don't know about it? Or what if I got locked in there overnight? What would I do? What would happen? Do those mannequins come alive at night? Like, I don't know. I would just think these weird thoughts. And it's just kind of weird, the stores, because you think about it, you're there during the day, everything is bustling, all the lights are on, people are ringing up purchases and picking things out, and then 12 hours usually at night, it's shut down. And what happens there in the middle of the night, right? Like, it's kind of eerie to think about. But this book, it was really funny too. There were so many parts where he really had me laughing, and he was so creative with it, just on the different pages where he's describing the different furniture and what it is. And sometimes it's kind of a hint as to what the upcoming chapter might be. And I just loved how he integrated the pieces of furniture into the storyline. It was really good. I genuinely loved this book. There was a couple parts where it was kind of got a little weird, but they didn't last long enough to really, I don't even know why I'm mentioning it to you now. They didn't last long enough to make a note of it. But the first book I read of Grady Hendrix was, where is it? The Final Girl Support Group. And I really had mixed feelings about that book. I still do. And I gave it 3 stars. And I wish that I have read this one first, because for me this was a 5-star read. I really loved it. I loved going down memory lane of working retail. I feel like some of the more beautiful parts of retail are going away, and I don't know that they'll come back. I don't know that we'll have stores like that again. And I mean, I know we do right now, but how long will it last, right? Because stores, more and more, your brick and mortar stores are going away. And one of my favorite things about working retail was gift wrapping and working in catalog departments, both of which are gone. So it's just, the malls don't feel like they used to. You know, if you know, you know what I mean. If you don't, okay. But it just brought me back to all that. I really loved it. The one thing that makes me a little bit sad is I felt like the way it was set up at the end, he kind of could write another book following this up. Kind of could, if you read the end. But I don't think that there is a second book, and I wish there was. Also, if you know, let me know. Has this been made into a movie? Because I want to watch it. I want to watch it. I feel like this should be made into a movie. I think it'd make a great movie. So if you've read any of these books so far, or the next 2 books I'm going to talk about, let me know. I want to hear what you thought of them, because this has been a great month so far for me. 3 books in a row are all 5 stars. That's amazing. Is it going to keep going that way? Well, no. But the fact that it went that long is amazing. I can't remember the last book I read last month. Was that a 5-star? I don't even remember what the last book was. But I'm pretty impressed. The next book that I read was this one, Decelerate Blue. This is a graphic novel, and it's about a girl named Angela that is, basically it's a dystopian book. She lives in a time where she feels like she's seeing the truth, and no one else around her is. Her family and her friends are all gone. Off with the illusions that the government has created for them. And she feels very alone, and then she finds out that there's this whole underworld of people that feel the same way she does. And that's all I'm going to say about it, except for, because I don't want to give anything away in case you want to read it, I do recommend reading it if you love a good dystopian book. It was very 1984, or kind of had Kurt Vonnegut moments to it. So if you're into those kind of books, you definitely might want to give this a chance. Another thing that really excited me about this book, before I even started reading it, this book was dedicated by the author to Kurt Vonnegut. Okay. I love Kurt Vonnegut. So that said something to me right away about the author. But there was some holes in this book that I wasn't really quite a fan of. And then I kept thinking, well, maybe there's a sequel. I mean, it is a graphic novel, and then those pieces, those little holes could be filled in. There is no sequel. This is a standalone book. To my knowledge, it's the only book, the only graphic novel this author has wrote. I don't know. I'm obviously not a writer, or I would have known which way to use that word. But because it fell flat in certain ways, I'm just going to give it 3 stars. But I do recommend reading it. Make sure you're in the right mindset to read it if you're going to read it, though, because I think dystopian books are a little bit much for some people right now. So just make sure that you're careful if you're going to read it. And the last book that I read was Intensity by Dean Koontz. So this book I don't really want to tell you what it's about, because I think it might even be better if you don't read the back and just pick up the book and read it, because the back didn't do it justice, and it's hard to describe a book like this without giving stuff away. What I will say is it's about a woman named China, and it's got 2 protagonists. So the other protagonist is the serial killer, and it's kind of a cat and mouse kind of book. A good versus evil. The evil one, the serial killer, is very full of himself and always completely self-assured. And the good girl, China, is very self-doubting and unsure of herself. I thought it was really fascinating, some of the psychological depths that the author went to with the serial killer and with the other protagonist, China, the survivor, or the one who's trying to survive, or the mouse. And one thing I thought was super fascinating when the book is talking about the serial killer is some of the things that he enjoys in life are so normal and human. And I thought, gosh, that's kind of weird to think of. So often with books or shows, they make it out like the serial killer is just like this ball of evil just sitting around waiting to hurt people. But there are still things that there's still ways that we're alike, though, which is kind of creepy too to think of. That we're maybe not that different from a serial killer. And would we really know if we saw a serial killer or met one? Would we really know that they were? I mean, I think I've read somewhere there's like some statistic that all of us have come in contact with a serial killer multiple times in our lives, like whether it be on an elevator or maybe it was a coworker or something like that. And it draws the question, what would we think of them if we did meet them? Would we be manipulated into thinking they were normal? Or would we see through them? I go off on all these weird things when I read books. My brain goes all kinds of wild places, doesn't it? There's a lot of redemption and survival themes in this book, but it's also a very disturbing book. It's very hard to read it. There's a couple times where I questioned whether or not I wanted to keep reading it. So there are a lot of triggers in here. If you're triggered somewhat easily by violence or rape, you might not want to read this book. I mean, it was really hard to read at certain times, and just a very blatant showing of how violent and cruel, not cool, some people can be. It did drag on a lot for me at certain times. Just as an example, there's a scene where someone's driving down the road, and I feel like it was like 80 pages of their thoughts when they were driving down the road, and that kind of stuff. It just felt like it was like too drawn out and long, and almost like the author was trying to reach a page number quota or something. So that's the one downfall for me, aside from just how nauseating it could be at times. I know when you're talking about a serial killer, though, it's going to be nauseating to some degree, but I thought it was really good. I don't plan on rereading it or anything, and because it dragged out so much, I'm going to give it 4 stars. If you really like a cat and mouse story, or you like a story about someone trying to survive some horrible things, I definitely recommend this. Or if you like looking into the psychology of a serial killer, you might really find this to be a fascinating take on that as well. I told you in my last video that I would tell you the story about my favorite gift of all time that I've ever been given. Okay. Brad and we met, kind of funny, we met in a pub. And I looked over and I saw him, and he just had Marine written all over him. I find Marines very appealing. And I asked him to come sit and talk to me. Just keep me company while I sit here. And so we sat and we had some drinks together, and it's kind of funny. We ended up closing the bar. We sat together so long talking, and we had this really mentally stimulating conversation, which just got me right away, hook, line, and sinker. And he did not ask for my phone number at the end of the night. So I shook his hand and left, thinking, oh, well, he's not attracted to me. Isn't that just the luck, right? I finally meet this great guy. And he's not into me. And I thought, well, oh well. And, life is going to have to go on. But for me and him, it was love at first sight for both of us. And so we ended up running into each other very soon thereafter at the same bar. And we spent a bunch of time talking again that night. That's when he asked for my phone number, and the rest ended up being history. Well, on our very first date, he showed up. Now, this was in December, and he said that he had a Christmas present for me on our first date. And I said, "Oh, really? What'd you give me?" So, just to backtrack real quick, when we were, the first night we met, I had told him about school, how I was a psychology major, and I just wasn't feeling it for certain reasons anymore. I didn't believe in that field anymore. And I was thinking about going towards sociology, but my real love was art and art history. And I was trying to figure out, well, if I changed my degree, could I make that work anyway? And he was asking me, what do I love about art history? And so I was explaining to him that I find it so fascinating what art that is popular at certain times can say about that time and about that community, what's going on. It's interesting to me that when a certain community loves a certain piece of artwork in a certain time, it really can tell you something about those people at that time and what might be going on in their community. And I find it fascinating why certain people paint certain kinds of artwork and why certain people are in love with certain kinds of artwork, and what does that all say about us, right? And that's why I love art so much. So he shows up on our first date with this gift for me, and here's what it is. So this is my favorite gift of all time. Oh, it's very heavy. It's this huge coffee table book about art. And inside of it, it not only shows different art, of course I open it to the nudes one, right? But it goes into different art that was, let me put it on Marty's little stand since Marty's not sitting here. Different kinds of art that were famous in different times and places, and why it was famous in those different times and places. And it's a beautiful book. It's of course got a lot of pictures, but the way that it goes into the different artists and kind of a little brief sketch of their life, and it kind of explains why they made the kind of artwork that they did. It's just really beautiful, this book. And to me, that told me, it also has, just to let you know, different sections. It'll have work or the ocean or whatever, and paintings that were famous of those kind of themes, and where and when and why. And it's just amazing. Anyway, I was so touched that this man that I had just met, the night I met him, while we're drinking, was listening so much to what I said. He didn't just listen. He understood what I was saying and remembered it later enough to go hunt for a book about that subject. Like, to me, that says a lot. That's the book. That's my favorite gift of all time. To me, it's got a lot of meaning, and I love having it out where I can look at it whenever I want. As far as updates go, well, I don't know that there's a whole lot to say about what's been going on in my life since I last did an update. We have been staying home a lot. It feels like I keep waiting for everything to calm down a little bit and things to start going back to normal, and it just keeps not happening that way, and people are just so on edge, and I don't know, maybe it just won't ever go back to that. We did see the movie Malignant on HBO Prime, and I don't recommend it. I didn't like it. There was a lot of holes in it, and there was a lot of timeline inconsistencies where it would mention something that happened when someone was a child, and yet when you see the imagery of it, it looks recent, or take that and flip it around. A lot of, well, these things never happened until this certain point in someone's life, but yet then they show the footage of it and it's earlier in their life. None of it made sense. It started off very exciting and good, and I thought it would turn into this great movie, but then the holes and the inconsistencies just didn't add up for my brain, you know. Oh, and I did finally last night get a really good night of sleep. I still have insomnia. I don't know when this big event I'm feeling is coming, which is very disturbing to me, but it's helping me read a lot of books. So I guess that's good for you guys. Now, don't count on me always reading 8 books a month or more, but and while this insomnia is going on, it's definitely making it easier to read. What I finally did was I broke down, I took some Benadryl at like 7 p.m. and then woke up at 8 a.m. And I'm not recommending that anyone do that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but I just needed to get some solid sleep for once because it's been so bad. And I was still tossing and turning according to Brad, but at least I actually slept for a solid 13 hours. And I woke up, and it's kind of funny. I woke up and I took a shower. When I got out of the shower, I felt like Snow White. It was like, I felt like there was birds flying around and landing on my hand, and I just felt so happy because I finally got at least some sleep. So that's really good. I think the Nightmare on Elm Street movies will really be a little more meaningful to me this year because there's something about insomnia that really can mess with your mind, and I think it's those movies really highlight that. But okay, so I'm rambling. I'm going to stop talking. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned. Let me know if you want to read any of the books that I mentioned. So thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to hear your input on what you've thought of these books if you've read them, or if you want to read them, let me know. I love you. Oh, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night. Bye.